First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of the session for accepting us and having us here, and all of you for staying here, because I understand it's a little out of context maybe with talking about the Americas after session focused and conference actually focused so much on European territory. So thank you very much, and also I have to apologize because I have to make another presentation in a neighboring session a few minutes, so I will rush out immediately after I finish, which I thought, of course, it's a good strategy in case you have difficult questions or you want to criticize my work, our work. Anyway, 1 minute or 30 seconds just to put you in context, a geographic context, since it's so alien to your quotidian knowledge. This is the study area where we are working. This is the Atacama desert coast. This is northern Chile here, and this is our study area. The area is very particular. As you know, this is the most hyperarid desert in the world. In the coastal desert, we have 8 millimeters average rainfall a year. In some areas, we have 1 or 2. There's a very narrow coastal platform, no more than 500 meters between the Pacific Ocean and this coastal range that has a climb up of 2,000 meters and very shortly. So it's very narrow coastal platform. Due to the hyperaridity, of course, we have a very low terrestrial biomass production, and there are no permanent rivers. The only sources of dependable water are brackish and dispersed springs, small springs. And despite all of that, we have one of the most productive marine ecosystems in the world due to the effect of Humboldt current and so forth. Well, I'll not go into the details. So this very extreme environment has been populated since the population of the Americas some 12 or 13,000 years ago until present. This is more or less how it looks like, so you can have an idea. Very short coastal platform, very strong climb up of the coastal range, and of course, very arid. This area was, I told you, 12,000 years occupied by hunter-gatherers. This is the one place in the Atacama Desert where hunter-gatherers remained hunter-gatherers for the whole of the history until they disappeared because of modern, well, whatever. And and they were seen in the late 19th century, already doing some herding though, but still hunter-gatherers living in this type of settings. And they were described throughout the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th century by European people as being very brute and being most miserable people and almost naked. And they again and again they mentioned that they eat only fish and their only food is fish and they feed fish. So it's interesting for various reasons, of course, but what I mean to say is that we have 12,000 years of hunter-gatherer history in this extreme environment, but even though we have such a long history, it has not been without transformations and transitions. I could have chosen to focus on any transitions throughout this 12,000 year history. These are how we have divided some of this time period, not all of it. But I've chosen to focus on one, on what I believe is the most dramatic, the most important transformation of this hunting-gathering societies during this history. So in 2 minutes, I'll try to give a flavor of what this process, I'm going to focus on this moment here. So let me give you a focus of what was happening before, just before we concentrate on what happened here. If we were to summarize this, 8,000 or 7,000 year process here, I would choose 3 elements to characterize it. First, we have a change from a mixed economy down here to a maritime specialization. You see this in the archaeofaunal remains, from varied to almost only fish remains in the sites, and you see also this in the isotopes. You see almost all, we have a small sample, only 30 individuals, but they've all fall of them over the trophic chain of the marine predators. So these are people living in fish as Europeans saw them at 16th century, but this was a gradual process. It was not originally so. So one thing, we have this change in economy, in subsistence base. The other change important that we have in this period is from a generalized technology to a very specialized technology in the resources of this area, for coastal gathering, for fishing, for sea hunting, using boats and so forth, some of which has been depicted in rock art. You see the boats here hunting sometimes what do you call the tuna fish or big whales and so forth, and you see the nets and everything. Well, so we have also, this is also a change, gradual change from a generalized technology to a technology specialized in the specific resources of this area. So that's another point. And the third one, it's a change from the first period to the fourth and third period, from very high mobility of these hunter-gatherers and small demographic numbers to low residential mobility and higher numbers. And you can see the low residential mobility in sites such as these. These are the shell middens you can find. This was actually excavated by archaeologist Junius Bird in the 1930s. You can see how arid this area is, because this is the profile he left in the 1936. And this is a picture I took 2 or 3 weeks ago, 80 years later, and the profile is still intact. So that means hyperaridity. Okay. So this is the type of shell middens. So from a dispersed, low occupation, high residential mobility, to this type of sites when you have low residential mobility, stable occupations, and larger sites and more amount of sites, so probably more demographic numbers. And actually then you find even structures on top of this with burials and structures on top of these mounds and so forth. But what happens after this Archaic 4? What happens in Archaic 5? After this huge shell middens I've shown you, what you find is this. This is a typical occupation of the Archaic 5. And these are mainly Aeolic sands, in between which you have a few artifacts and a few bones and a few mollusks and whatever. So, of course, the type of site changes dramatically. After 4,000 Cal BP, more or less, what you find is ephemeral residential occupations. These seem to be residential. They are very ephemeral. You have less sites. You can see here, for example, Archaic 4, the amount of sites. You see the amount of sites in Archaic 5. So you have ephemeral occupations, less sites. Sites are smaller also in the horizontal dimension. You find no cemeteries. You did have the burials, remember, in the structures I just showed you. No cemeteries, just 1 or 2 isolated burials in rock shelters. But you have the same technology. You have the same subsistence base. Subsistence base, again, you can see it here. These are actually averages of many samples from different places in the study area, and all of them, even before 4,000 and after 4,000, they all fall in the same plot area. So it seems it's the same people, the same tradition, at least technologically, at least economically, it seems to be the same people. But there's a radical change in settlement patterns, settlement systems, and demography. So what is change? How can we explain this change or this sudden and important transition? And our hypothesis, the one we're working on, is that there was a catastrophic event occurring here, that's a mega earthquake and tsunami. How did we arrive to such a strange conclusion? Well, we weren't looking for this. It just started to spring out. First line of evidence is that we have an uplifted beach level that's from 4 to 7 meters above current sea level, systematically throughout the coast. This is current sea level. You see the current beach, and you have another beach formation over there where this people is standing, which is also responsible for the erosion of these debris flows and these rocks over there. So this is another example, the beach here now, current beach, and the ancient beach eroding these debris flows. This beach is 4 to 7 meters above sea level, I told you, about current sea level. Another example, I will not go into the details of these examples. When you excavate these upper beaches, what you find is that they're beaches. They're not storm deposits, they are beach deposits, and they have, that's quite clear. So what's a beach doing 4 to 7 meters above sea level? If we were in Europe or other places in the world, you might expect that this is a Pleistocene, high-level, static remain of the. But this is not so, because when we have dated them, please concentrate on what's in the circle. I'll show you the rest of the image afterwards. what we found is that systematically these beaches, ages of these beaches are between 6,000 to 2,000 BC. And according to modern knowledge, the sea level stabilization around the world occurred something around 6,000 BP, 4,000 BC. And we have beaches occurring after this period, 4 to 7,000 meters above current sea level. So the most logical explanation for that is that we have a tectonic uplift. Tectonic uplifts are very common in the coast of Chile. You may have heard of the 2010 8.8 earthquake in Chile, and geologists recorded uplift of up to 3 meters of the crust after the occurrence of this major earthquake. These elevated beaches we have found and dated in the area of Taltal, but we have found also in this area, and we are about to receive dates from this area here. So it might mean an uplift of more than 300 and maybe 400 and maybe even 500 kilometers of coast, which can only be caused if this is a tectonic uplift by a major earthquake. These are the known crust uplifts of known recorded earthquakes. 8.4, this is the surface it uplifted, and 8.1 this, and 8. We are thinking at least this is the area it might have uplifted, and crossing even what seismologists think it's a seismic barrier, that's this peninsula. I will not go into these details, but geologists say that if this was really an earthquake that caused this is a really major 9.0 earthquake at the least. That would of course caused a major tsunami, as some of these have caused. Especially these tsunamis could have been recorded in the archaeological sites, considering their closeness to the sea. And in fact, what we find in many sites, you see this type of erosion that's quite characteristic of erosional deposits caused by tsunamis, as recorded by geologists working nowadays. These are different sites. Only these two are from the same site, but from different areas of the site. And this type of erosion stratigraphically occurring at the same position systematically in many of the sites, and with very little occupation above this erosion. We have some sites in which you can find here layers of beach sand in between the shell midden. The sedimentological analysis and chemical analysis are on the way, but it's very clear that these are beach deposits, but in the middle of a shell midden located 18 meters above current sea level. So, I mean, it's difficult to explain how a beach got there. And the structures you find, when you excavate some of the structures, you find like this, or you may find them like this arrow pointing towards the sea. So we believe we have archaeological evidence also of of destruction, of alteration of archaeological sites due to a probable effect of the tsunami. We have yet dated, this is a Bayesian statistics of the dates we have. I was supposed to have received much more before this conference. I couldn't, unfortunately. So I only have 2 after the event. But if we consider this preliminarily, the 2 after the event and the ones that we have before the event, means that this event would have occurred something between 3.8 thousand BP. Cal BP would have occurred this event, which matches quite nicely also to the disoccupation of these structures and these archaic 4 sites I was telling you throughout the coast, the Archaic coast. No more of these structures are dated after this period. So what we're suggesting, therefore, of course, and with this I conclude, that we have the same people, we have the same tradition, but we have a radical change in settlement systems and demography. I already told you. We believe this is caused by this major mega earthquake and tsunami. The implications of which, of course, we think are much more than only of interest to prehistorians. We're working also of how the implications this might have for current policies in the coastal of northern Chile, to how these are the inundation zones throughout northern Chile. They are calculated according to the effect of known historical tsunamis. The not known prehistorical tsunamis may show that events can eventually be even more complicated. And this is, just to finish, this is an interesting graph, I think, because this shows after the Archaic 5 and during Archaic 6, we see again more people, more sites, bigger sites, cemeteries appear again. But when the cemeteries appear again, they are located in different positions. All of the blue ones are the Archaic, the pre-earthquake cemeteries. The red ones are the post-earthquake cemeteries. This is just the statistics that shows that there's a statistical difference between both. And we believe maybe the explanation why the dead are buried much higher in altitude in regards to the pre-earthquake is, of course, because of the resilience and the understanding of local populations towards the effect of these disasters. Of course, if that hypothesis is correct, this too means that either they are too late or they didn't learn their lesson, and they well, nothing to do with that. Okay, thank you very much.